Okay. Nisamburi Hinaka, aloha mai kako. Welcome to Tala Time in Ever Uvi Community. We have a lot of new folks here today, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about Ever Uvi Community. We've got a lot of folks who I don't recognize names in here, so that's awesome. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. A little bit about where we are today. Make sure that we are oriented. We know what the space is and what it's about before we get into the discussion. So my name is Clarinda Tivoli. I am of Fijian and Samoan descent. My father's side goes back to the province of Namdronga in the village of Komave on the island of Vitilevu in Fiji. My mother's side goes to the island of Upolu in Samoa, the village of Lepea. My father's side also goes to Faliatu on Upolu as well. I'm a marketing consultant, have been for about 15 years, and I have done a lot of work in creating marketing and business training materials, and have done a lot of work to create decolonizing business, educational programming, and community programming. So that's what this is about. That's why we're here. That's the container that this is in today. Tala Time. Tala means story in Samoan and in many other Polynesian languages. Ever Uvi is the name of our community. So let me tell you about the Uvi. The Uvi in Fijian is the yam. We have a lot of different varieties of yam, but Uvi is very sacred to us. We consider it our noble crop. It's our noble crop. So like when we have harvest time, which is in Feb, we like the first uvi that is harvested, that is brought to our high chief, and it's kind of like that is the symbol of, if that is doing well, then everything is doing well. And our lives are so oriented around the uvi and the cycles of the seasons of the uvi, that our entire calendar is oriented around the uvi. And so it's symbolic, I guess, our community and the work that we do in knowing that our work in business rooted in frameworks of decolonization, of liberation work, that we acknowledge that is an everyday practice, an all the time practice. That is something that we have to continue to work to come back to. And just like with the uvi and with that, it requires a whole reorientation every day, all the time, just like with the uvi, all year round, all through the seasons. So with the work that we do, I know we've got a lot of different folks here today, but I know a lot of folks are in business or have been in business or transitioning or pivoting, or, got a lot of folks who are we're out here, we have to diversify. We're doing all the things. We've got all kinds of different jobs here and there, and working in our businesses. We know that business needs to be done differently. We know this. We know that we don't want to hustle. We know that we don't want to grind. We don't want to burn out. We know that we don't want to sell out. We don't want to compromise our values. We don't want to replicate harm that is done that is commonplace in marketing and business. we know that needs to be done differently. We also know that the future is indigenous. We know that pre-capitalism, post-capitalism, it doesn't matter what is going on. We have been doing business in certain ways. We will continue to do business in certain ways that center our communities and value the health of all of our people. That is what Ever Uvi Community is about. That's what we keep coming back to as practice. So how we do that is we have an online community. It's hosted on Mighty Networks. We have a whole series of, sorry, I'm just letting some people in. We have a whole series of programming. We have co-working sessions. We have support hours. People can get one-to-one consulting time with me. We've got coursework that's available that people can kind of work on independently. You've got a lot of resources, and these are resources that I've put together over 15 years now of marketing and working with businesses in the time that I have. Yes. So what I'm going to do, we'll get started in just a moment. I know we've still got more people coming in. I'm going to pop a little link if anybody is interested to look into the work of Ever Uvi. That is in the chat. And I'll show you real quick the our prospectus. So that's the link that I've just popped in the chat. So if you want to go through that, that's got all of our programming in there. Yes. If you're interested at all, read page 4. This will give you a very good idea of where I'm coming from, the story, our theme that encompasses this coming year about genealogy. So yeah, all the information about programming is in there. There's different levels of membership, different features, different benefits, and a lot of different, this kind of, just to give some context, there's different courses, workshops, resources that have been provided over the years that I've done a few times. Some of you might recognize some of these that are made available as a part of membership, and it's extremely accessible. So where these courses used to be, this course used to be $6,000. This is now, these resources are made available within membership at very accessible monthly membership fees. So yes, so have a look at that. There is our Patreon where you can become a member. That's where you can have a look at the different tiers, the different membership levels. And if you are, there is so there's Koto membership, and then there is also Kambasi membership. Have a read and find out what those are about. But if you were interested in Kambasi membership, there is an application form, and the links are all in the Patreon, as well as the prospectus. And that's really simple, but that just kind of gives me an idea of where you're at, what your story is, what you're about. So yeah, so that's that. So what I have found over the years is that the work that I've done in working with a lot of business clients, I can only take it so far. We in business, I mean, as just people, as whole people, we need a lot of people. We need a lot of support. We need a variety of support and skill sets surrounding us. What I found over the years in working with the clients that I have, I'm very skilled in, ad campaign strategy and social media marketing and email marketing, content creation, and a whole series of things. But there's only so much of that I can do when a client may be experiencing blockages or hesitations, things that are just mentally, emotionally, they're feeling like is getting in the way of their progress. There's times, as an example, there was a time I was working with a client. She had a huge marketing budget. It was like over $350,000. Very, very high pressure kind of situation. I was one of the I was leading the marketing campaigning for her at the time, and we had everything ready. All of the experts were brought in. We had the book person, we had the documentarian, we had the Facebook marketing strategist, we had all of the people in there and all of the support and all the strategy that we needed. However, once we were about to press go on that launch, she didn't want to do it anymore. And she found herself laying on the floor, not just frozen, not doing anything for like 12 hours. And I find this to be a very common occurrence if we are not paying attention along the way to resistances that are coming up, signs of self-sabotage. There's a lot to that. And so that's why we're having this conversation today. Yeah, there's a lot of amazing work that we all have to do and have to bring into the world. And there are things that get in the way of that, that feel invisible, that are hard to name. And so I really want to spend the time today kind of naming those things, bringing some awareness to those things. And the absolute best person that I know to do that is Joy Kimmett. Hey. Thanks for joining us, Joy.
I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so happy to see you because it's been so long.
Yeah, it has.
Okay. So, before we, because I know we will, once we go, we're just going to run in this conversation, but I want to make sure we don't forget. Joy has a really, it's a workshop, I believe, that I highly, highly recommend if self-sabotage is something that you are keen and aware that this is something that you need to work with. I highly, highly recommend. I will always, to my clients, will always highly recommend Joy's work, no matter what the container is. I'll just send them her way. Yeah, Meet the Tiger. That's coming up real soon. What's the date?
It's May 18th through 19th. And I just dropped the link in the chat for anybody who may.
Perfect.
It is a 2-day intensive because I tried to do it in 1 day, but there was just so much that needed to be covered just to get a foundational understanding of self-sabotage that I had to split it into 2 days because it really was a deep dive. And I mean, from what I've heard from people is it's life-changing. What I've heard from people is that this course touches what 14 years of therapy couldn't do.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I know that feeling.
Tooting my own horn a little bit here, but it really is. This is not like a perspective that you're going to. It's not the perspective that you've seen on self-sabotage or procrastination or anxiety or any of the blocks or resistances that you get maybe on Instagram or even from a psychological perspective. We deal with the social, we deal with the spiritual, we deal with the psychic, we deal with the body. So there's a lot of layers that we're dealing with in Meet the Tiger.
Oh, okay. I've got a question, Perry. I want to take Meet the Tiger and I have an event 18th and 19th. Do you know when the next one will be?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know when the next one will be. And Clarinda knows this. I don't know if I, when I'm going to run
If you're
or if
gonna
I'm going.
if you're
Yeah,
gonna do it again. No, that's the thing. Yeah. You just
but
You'll be on to the next one.
it will be recorded for anybody who attends or can't attend those days. It will be recorded. So
Okay.
this may or may not be the last one. I said the last one was the last one. We'll see.
Mm. No, but that is a real thing with you. Sometimes you're like, no, I'm over this. When we're doing the next thing now.
Yeah.
So that does happen. Cool. Okay. Any questions about Meet the Tiger, about Ever Uvi before we jump in? I will also say you're welcome. I know we've got a large group today, but you are welcome at any time to unmute, ask questions, interact. We love that. So please do that. Please feel comfortable to do that. Yeah. Okay. Chat is open. You can pop questions, comments. Please interact throughout. We love that. Yes. So where shall we begin? Would you like me to give you a little bit of an access point? Maybe somewhere that I've been at with this theme, and we can go from there. I don't know. What do you want to do? Or do you have something on your heart, Joy, that you want to go in on right now?
I don't. I'm down for whatever. Okay. I'm here for the conversation.
Okay.
So whatever, wherever you want to start, I'm ready.
Okay. Gosh. Okay, so a couple things. I mean, just generally, like I have significant frustration with a lot of the typical conversation around self-sabotage, around procrastination. Um, just real people are really out here with ads, with paid ads, talking about how they can medicate these things or how they have certain timetables to help you with or figure out if you're a bear personality or an evil personality, and then you can figure out what your timetable should be in a day to work best and like body optimization. So that's super frustrating. Yeah, people are still talking about that. Just so I don't know. That's frustrating. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Well, I'm glad the conversation has moved on from hopefully, prayerfully, fingers crossed, has moved on from like, just make yourself do it. Just motivate yourself.
Right.
Just push yourself, So,
Right.
all of these different systems that people are coming up with to sort of classify and codify how to work if you're a bear or a projector or an Aries or whatever, whatever system that you're working in is way better, I think, than everybody has to just motivate themselves and kick themselves in the ass to move forward. It's still not optimal though. So I understand, and I also share your frustration in that, because it keeps us looking for leadership outside of ourselves. And that's really what those systems are doing. Like when you're I'm this, and so I have to, these are so it's not to say that you can't get tools from anywhere else, right? But the conversation is not and hasn't been the conversation is not, and it hasn't been how do you know who you are? It is not, and it has not been, what voice is leading and guiding you? It has not, and it is not, even in this moment, the conversation isn't, why do you have resistance? What is the blockage? What is the obstacle? And in a way that is loving, curious, and inviting. And I think, because we are taught to see ourselves as little factories of productivity, we're always looking for some system or another that's going to tell us how we're supposed to work. And in looking for those systems, and I'm not, there are, I'm not anti-system. Well, I'm not going to say, I have resistances around systems. Clarinda knows this about me. But that's an individual thing. Theoretically, I'm not anti-system. And I think that a lot of these systems are still doing the work of bypassing the question of how do we know ourselves, right? And I think that the work that when we start talking about self-sabotage, that these conversations often begin in frustration. They have to begin, I just can't do this. I just can't make myself do this. I just can't make myself jump over this hurdle. I can't push myself in this direction. I keep trying to do this thing. So there's a gap between what we say we want to do and what we actually can do at that particular moment. And that gap leads to a lot of frustration. And so the conversation I would like to see move away from how do we push ourselves over that gap? How do we push ourselves over that threshold? And more deeply into a conversation about how do we come into a place where we are in full consent with ourselves to move forward. And I think this conversation, so my conversation around self-sabotage and procrastination, anxiety, all of these things, all of these obstacles, is not a conversation about how do I make it better. It's a conversation about how do I find a place of deep self-consent. Now, you know, in more spiritual terms, somebody might say alignment. People say at one-ment. People say coherence. For me, I think the conversation about consent at this moment is appropriate because we talk about, oh, you know, what's an enthusiastic yes when it comes to everybody else, but we don't have that for ourselves. And, you know, that I feel like maybe I'm gone beyond the the first part of the question, but I think, you know, for me, the conversation um, around how to move forward when we're experiencing obstacles and resistances and self-sabotage, it can't begin at how do I fit myself into a system? Because a system is always going to frustrate us because there's something else that's trying to get our attention. That's another point.
Okay. Okay. I am loving that verbiage around deep self-consent. Certainly, as I didn't think about that in contrast to the verbiage around like alignment, that doesn't quite make sense or kind of hit home in the way that deep self-consent does, and getting to that place of enthusiastic yes. Okay. So Alofa posted in the chat about your view on the AI time management systems to help procrastination versus self-powered internal systems of organization and management. I guess you kind of delved into that a little bit, yeah?
Yeah.
Just that.
I don't necessarily think it's a versus. I think that systems are to help us have definition, right? Like, so like if you, like today, you know how much I hate calendars, Clarinda, because you know me. But like, you know, if I put today, I put all of my tasks on a calendar for today. That's a system. That's a system to help me organize and define certain parts of time, right? It's fine. It's great to have a system, but it's never going to replace being able to move from a place of internal coherence. It's never going to replace being able to move from a place of that deep self-consent. And I would have to say that I don't necessarily mean that it doesn't necessarily have to be an enthusiastic yes, right? It doesn't have to be like, you're not always going to be jumping up for joy. You're not going to jump up for joy to take out the trash. You're not going to jump up for joy to like, unless you love numbers and to do accounting, you're not going to jump up for joy, you know, to do that. But can I bring all of myself to this place? Can I bring, you know, myself to a place where I can be present to what this is? You know, because a lot of what we see is procrastination, a lot of what we see is self-sabotage and resistance and blocks. Those things are actually things that are trying to get our attention. You know, they're like, hey, you forgot about me. You forgot about this part of yourself over here. And so we're taught to numb out, to push through, to, try to fit ourselves into the world in particular types of ways. But there's a Yoruba concept called the Ori, and it's like the head. And it's like, they say no blessings can come without the consent of your head, right? So like, if you don't have your own consent to do something, and you've probably experienced this too, where you may have even pushed yourself to do things, right? Like you pushed yourself past your block, you push yourself past your resistances, and you've had mediocre or lukewarm sort of, things, or, maybe it even went well, but it wasn't satisfying. It wasn't fully satisfying because you weren't fully present for the outcome of it. And so it for me, it goes beyond business, because it's our life isn't the point of us being alive isn't to be business owners. Business is a part of our life, right? But if the business isn't supporting who we are as beings, then we're going to experience resistances around it. If that makes sense. Does that make sense or not?
It does. So in your experience, how does this what are the typical symptoms of this when there is not this internal coherence, this deep self-consent? How does that show up?
It shows up, to me, it shows up in everything. It shows up for me personally, it shows up in freeze. It shows up in freeze. Like the story that you had where the woman was on the floor for 12 hours and she could, that to me, that's freeze. That's wait a minute, there's something big here. There's something monumental here that needs my permission to be present. I need to give myself my own permission. So it shows up in freeze. It can show up in distracting yourself with a lot of busy work that doesn't actually touch what you really want to do. It can show up in aspirational thinking and thinking about things that ain't even what you want, but what you think you're supposed to want. It can show up in addictions. It shows up in it shows up in so many different ways. I can't even, and I think almost everybody deals with some level of resistance, some level of self-sabotage. It shows up in procrastination. It shows up when anxiety shows up. It shows up, it showed up for me before I got on this call. I had to be present with myself and bring all of myself here, present to this moment so I could be here. It's not, it shows up in, I don't feel like it, not today. It shows up in scrolling. If you're continuously scrolling, so yeah, it shows up in all sorts of ways.
So this is something that I know I struggle with, like being able to, I feel like sometimes it takes me too long to recognize that that's what it is for me. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm caught up in like, no, I'm doing the right thing. Like I'm following along the track, but it's like, I know that I'm not feeling good along the way, but then there will be a point where I'm like a complete, I'm broken, I'm a mess. And I'm like, what, how did I even get to this point? So
I feel like so many people can relate to that. I feel like so many, I don't know anybody that doesn't relate to that point. You get to a point where it's like, you haven't been paying attention, and now all of a sudden it's, it's right there. And for me, it's about becoming more sensitive. And this is why the conversation around motivation and pushing yourself and self-improvement and self-help and making yourself, do the things, it falls flat. Not only does it fall flat, it's harmful, because in order for us to be able to switch gears, in order for us to be able to do the work that is most in alignment for us, We have to be able to be sensitive enough to feel it. But because we have been taught to not listen to ourselves for so long, that voice gets buried under a mountain of shoulds. So you wake up in the morning and, you're like, you may wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm not really hungry, but I should eat breakfast. I should. And then all day long, it starts, and there's all day long, it's should, till you go to sleep. And all day long, you're ignoring symptoms of discomfort that you had. And it's important to note that when I say something like, you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like eating, the question is not, I don't feel like eating, so I'm just not going to eat. The question is this, does eating serve my best interest right now? Is eating good for me? Will eating actually bring me more pleasure? Will eating fuel me? Will it bring me more energy? So it's asking deeper questions of ourselves as opposed to saying, oh, I'm just not going to eat, or I should eat. It's, hey, I don't feel like eating, but is eating what I need to do right now? Is eating something that is eating something that is actually going to serve me, and is being in conversation with our hunger or lack thereof. I don't know if that makes sense. That's a little bit vague, but
no, it's like I'm hearing like that constant reorientation of relationship with what we're doing, from that transition of going from the automated shoulds to what is that? I don't know what to name that.
To a conversation, to a relationship. See, and it's so interesting because we are in a time where we're like, a lot of people are talking about relationship to the earth, relationship to the trees, relationship to each other, kinship. We're talking about all of this relationship, but the primary relationship is the one that we a lot of times don't have. That conversation, like there's something, I think my mentor is actually in the call right now, but there's something that my mentor taught me to do. And it was really, it's an exercise. And she would say these words, and I would have to listen, and I listened to whether it was a yes or a no for me. And, so that I can get a sense of what my feeling of yes is and what my feeling of no is. We've been taught to deny ourselves for so long. We don't even actually know if we want what we want. We don't actually know what our no truly is. So it is about accessing deeper levels of sensitivity for ourselves, about when we get that first sign that this ain't it, that we're present with that sign. And it doesn't mean don't do it. It means pay attention. We're always getting the input as to what is good for us, what works for us, what's going to feed us, what's going to nourish us, what's going to hold us, what's going to care for us. We're always getting that input, right? Because we live inside of a grand system. A universal system, an earth system, an earth that supports us, that nourishes us, that cares for us. We live inside of a, in my worldview, a spiritual system where I have ancestors that support me. I have trees that support me. I have trees that know me by name. I have, the river knows who I am. Like, I have these relationships, but if I'm not actually listening, if I'm not listening first and foremost to myself, then I can't hear anything. I can't hear any information that's coming forth to me. And a lot of the times, because we've been taught inside of a white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal system, that we're supposed to, that there is one way to do things. And if our way of doing things doesn't mirror this, if our pathway forward doesn't match that we're doing something wrong. And so it takes a little bit of patience with ourselves to turn off those alarms, right? To even be with the alarm, to be with the anxiety, to be with the yikes, I don't know, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can do that. I don't like, can I dance can I dance my way into my introduction? I don't know, Jesus. Like, I have to, it takes a minute to be present with those parts of ourselves that we have been taught to deny. We have been taught to deny so much of ourselves so that we can fit into these systems that a lot of times we can't even hear that. We can't even hear ourselves.
I'm stuck on this. You said sometimes it's about
it's telling us to pay attention, and it's not necessarily a no. I feel like so many people get stuck in feeling like, folks that are a little bit more sensitive, emotionally aware, emotionally mature, have an understanding that, okay, maybe if I'm not feeling aligned, that's maybe that I need to pause. Maybe what the project that I'm doing right now, I need to stop. And then they just stop. And I feel like there's a lot of premature pausing, premature stopping, and people losing momentum or quitting when that's unnecessary. That's something that I've observed a lot with clients where I'm like, you didn't need to stop that entirely. There was one thing you needed to pay attention to.
Yeah. And people can't go beyond their nervous systems. You know what I'm saying? People can't, so you may think like you're on the outside looking in, you're like, everything's great except this one little part right there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But for that person, there's an alarm that's going off. There's, oh my God. Like I can't, they can't step beyond that threshold. So and this is why dealing with the body is so important. Like you can't just we can talk about this all day long, but our nervous systems, if our nervous system is telling us there's danger ahead, this is going, because when we get to a point where our nervous systems are on high alert, that's when you're talking about, you've ignored all of the past, warning signs, and you've moved past that, and now you in red. Once that button get hit, your body, your mind believes that it's going to die, believes that it's going to lose everything, believes that this is the worst. It don't matter what else is going on in the world or what else has happened in the past or what else is going to happen in the future. It believes that this is the worst crisis that has ever existed. And so coming into a place of self-leadership and coming into a place of self-sovereignty, coming into a place of being able to be present to that, it takes patience. It takes, like, oh, I see you're in an alarm right now. This is something my family therapist a few years ago said this to me. This was really good. Beyond the window, outside of the window of tolerance. That's it. I found that language to be so good. Because once you outside of your window of tolerance, logic doesn't work. And so a lot of times people are trying to logic their way into moving forward. And then that's where the frustration starts. That's where the self-judgment, the self-criticism, the negativity, the why can't I don't understand why and then you start talking bad about yourself. It starts right there because we don't have an actual understanding of how our bodies work, that if we feel deeply threatened, we are not going to be it's like you're a pillar of salt. You're not going to be able to move past that point. And so the job of the person or anybody else, like if you're a person who's talking to somebody who is outside of the window of tolerance, the first thing that you got to do is acknowledge that they're experiencing this thing. We're so used to minimizing, and so a lot of times for us, that's when we get into the scrolling, because we're trying to what's the word? Like distract ourselves from the alarm that we feel, right? We're trying to distract ourselves from our deep sense of worry, from our deep sense of feeling afraid, especially when we live in a time where, we have so much information coming in about wars and genocides and, so many different things are happening at this time. Like our bodies are a lot of times constantly in alarm, and the reality is that we were not meant to take in as much information as we're taking in right now. We're not meant to just be, scrolling and seeing. And I'm not even talking about like the horror. I'm talking about like you wake up in the morning and you scroll and you're on Facebook and you see 30 different people's thoughts. Your body, right? Your body is like, oh, what's happening here?
Yeah.
you know. And so a lot of times when we're scrolling, it's causing the alarm, but we're also numbing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be present to the alarm. There's an alarm. You can't pretend. If you pretend the alarm's not going off, you're going to be stuck in freeze. If the alarm is going off, you have to find where the alarm is going off so that you can be like, it's a false alarm. Okay, I got you. I'm here for you. I support you. You're talking to yourself. I love you. I got you. I here for you. I support you. That's what I had to do before I came into the call today. You know, there's a part of myself that deeply does not want to be visible at all. That wants to hide all the time. That does not like the idea of anybody that doesn't already know me knowing me. And so I had to be. So that part of myself was like, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna go make a broom. I'm gonna go make a broom. So I had to talk to my partner, like, I got you. It doesn't, no matter what happens in this conversation, I love you. I'm here for you. We could fall and it oftentimes it's a very young self. We could fall flat on our faces and it's gonna be all right. Because I got you. And that's when I'm talking about self-sovereignty and self-leadership. It's like the adult parts of ourselves have to be able to step forward and hold these smaller parts of ourselves. We think a lot of times when we see somebody doing something that doesn't make any damn sense to us, we think we're seeing adults. Most of the time we're seeing children. And when we don't make sense to ourselves, we think we're talking to, we think the voice in our head is an adult. My mentor said this to me on Monday. The voice in our head is a 2-year-old with very advanced language. So you trying to beat that little 2-year-old with logic. You can't do that. So we have to have more ways of being with ourselves that are genuinely supportive of our whole beings, and not just the parts of ourselves that we think are productive. I don't think that my the part of myself that wants to hide under the blanket is a productive part of myself, but she exists. So I have to welcome her in so that I can be present in my own leadership, so that I can share what I have to share with y'all today. I have to welcome my whole self, my wholeness to my work. And every time, and when I do that, because we put imposter syndrome on a flyer, when I welcome my whole self to the conversation, ain't no imposter here. I'm not faking anything. I don't have to, because all of who I am is accounted for. All of who I am consents to me being in this conversation with you. I don't measure up to anybody else, because I am my full measure. And it's so important that we don't deny ourselves the totality of who we are, so that we can sit up in a room and be and try to be somebody we're not, so that we can try to get some resources that we think that we need. Like, we have to be our whole selves. And in being our whole selves, that's what we find that our power is liberated, because so much of our power in this society, so much of most people's power goes to suppressing themselves, goes to suppressing the parts of themselves that they think are unruly, unlikable, unlovable, unproductive. So much goes to that. So much goes to trying to beat ourselves into some semblance of productivity. We don't even know who we are,
Just letting that one do its thing in
What'd
me
you
for
say?
a little bit. I said I'm just letting that one do its thing in me for a little bit. Thank you. I really appreciate what you've said, because you're talking about scrolling and doom scrolling and like getting caught up in just opening Facebook and seeing 30 different people's thoughts, and that be aside from the horror and awful things going on in the world, even just that is so disorientating and distracting and taking us out of ourselves. And as you were talking about those things, and that
Those are the things that we distract ourselves with. So I was like in my head, like, yeah, but joy, it's not comfortable to sit with ourselves though. I don't want to do that. But you went on like very quickly to talk about coming from this place of coming to it with this tenderness, with
Yes,
this love, right? Because in my
absolutely.
head I'm like okay, this is, if I'm gonna like stop scrolling, that means I need to get to work like this. I need to show
Right.
up as a leader. I need to
And that's
get
right
my
there.
shit together, and it
And that right
feels like
there.
too much, and I'm like, forget it, I'm not
Yeah. And that right there. So that's a perfect access point to power, right? Because you said the reason why you're scrolling is because you feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're not doing that, you have to step into this other role.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, so
yeah.
there's a part of you that does not want to fucking step into that role. And that
Yes,
part of
correct.
you is saying that instead of stepping into that role, we not finna step into that role. We're going to stay right here and scroll. And so this is what I would do, because somebody else asked about numbing through scrolling.
Yeah,
And I want to be
yeah.
clear that this is not from a judgmental perspective. Like I doom scroll. I'm not sitting up here like, oh, if you doom scroll, there's something, like you're not spiritually woke or something like that. I'm sitting
Right.
here because I know that is a point of pain for a lot of people,
Mhm.
because we are putting our time into this far beyond what we would want to do. So that's why I'm focusing on scrolling. And I want to be clear about that, because what we can't do is be like, this is another thing we need to fix. And I'm saying that, and I'm saying like, you said tenderness, and I know a lot of people think that this is like, that's nice, but it's not really. I want to be clear that trying to fix yourself does not fucking work, and that's why everybody is still doom scrolling. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we, beyond the approach of tenderness and self-love and all of that being good for us, it is a better approach that actually works to forward us toward the goals that we say that we want. So for instance, you said, I'm doom scrolling because I don't want to step into this leadership role. There is some part of you that is asking for your attention. That is not oh yeah, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, I'm the marketing genius. There's a part of you that wants your attention, that is saying, if we don't get that attention, we're not letting you do nothing. Hold on for 1 second. Yes, baby.
Yeah, yeah.
If you've been doom scrolling for so long and you're like super numb and like you're not frozen, how do you notice that something's actually screaming? What if it's been screaming for so long that it just in the background?
What if it's been screamed? My child asked the question, because they've been
Yeah.
listening.
Let's address it.
What if you've been scrolling for so long that it's that you don't even know that they're screaming at you? Is that the question? Well, I think that's a lot of people. A lot of people literally block out that noise. And so part of our work is to start becoming is to become more sensitive, right? And that is being slow, being present, breathing. What do I actually feel right now? What am I actually feeling right now? What do I actually desire right now? What would bring me pleasure in this moment? What would feel the most fulfilling and the most nourishing in this moment? Because a lot of times we're like, I don't think that it's actually true that we don't hear it. It's that we're moving so fast that we think that we can ignore it. So when we slow down, and this is also like part of the point of meditation too, right? Is that it allows us to slow down enough that all of that starts coming up. And that's why a lot of people don't fucking like meditation, because then you're there with yourself, and that, and that self, it's uncomfortable to start feeling feelings that you ain't felt in a while. you know and so, yeah, I would say slow down. Okay, did that answer your question? I love them. It's my baby.
I so appreciate the question because that just answered a lot for us all, I think.
Yeah,
Such great questions.
it is, you know, there's a person named Asia Dorsey, and we did this workshop. She did this workshop, and she said, when we are feeling anxiety, anxiety steals time. It makes our timeline seem very, very short. It makes everything seem very, very, very urgent. And so a lot of us, even if we don't have like a, a diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder or something like that, this society is moving at the pace of anxiety. And so when we even if we aren't feeling, you know, maybe we feel like we need to slow down, everything else seems to be moving so fast that we start getting alarms because we're trying to slow down. But it is in slowing down and being present that we can actually make the most powerful decisions for ourselves. There's a difference between doing 100 things. You can do 100 things from anxiety. You could do 100 things in resistance to yourself. You could do 100 things, and you could do one very powerful thing, and that can make all of the difference in your life. That can make all of the difference in how you move. And so this is sad because we talk like power is something that, you know, this society works very hard to remove us from, you know. And so we think that we think that our power is in moving forward. But what if our power is in our pleasure? What if it's actually in deeply loving ourselves and welcoming ourselves home and welcoming those non-productive aspects of ourselves, welcoming those playful, welcoming the grieving aspects of ourselves, welcoming all of those aspects of ourselves that allow us to make the most powerful decisions, that allow us to consider what it means to live our lives, right? Because the business is a part of us, a part of our lives, is an aspect of our lives. We are so much bigger than our business. But if we try to fit all of who we are into the model of productivity, then we're missing out on so much information that's going to allow us to make the decisions that are best for us to move forward.
Okay, but
I love a butt. I like big butts.
I know, me too. What if we feel like we don't have the luxury of that joy? What if we feel like we don't have the luxury of pausing, of entertaining those parts of ourselves that are needing to be brought in, the pleasure, the joy, the grief, all of the feeling. What if we feel like we don't have that luxury?
If somebody have a gun to your head, you know what I'm saying? Like literally, like there are people in this world that may not have the luxury in this very moment, you know, because they're fleeing from violence, because they are deeply, because they're being deeply oppressed and terrorized. There are people that even in the midst, I can't even say, because even in the midst, I've watched Palestinian children play. I've watched and I'm not saying that lightly. Like, I'm not saying that to like be like, oh, if the Palestinians can do it, why can't? No, I'm saying that like if your life isn't literally being threatened right now, then you have the luxury. That's how I feel. Like, and it's not a luxury, and that is the other part of this, right? Is that we tend to think that feeling good, that feeling pleasurable, that feeling joy, that feeling expansive, that feeling nourished, that feeling rested is a luxury. But if you're not feeling those things and you're making decisions for your life, what type of decisions are you making? Not only is it a birthright, right? I love that. It is a birthright. Not only is it a birthright, it is imperative. It is imperative, because if everything that you are conjuring comes from not being well rested, not being well nourished, not feeling pleasure, not feeling joy, not feeling, yes, it's our responsibility. Exactly. Like if everything that we touch comes from that, then that's what we recreate. So you don't, I can't overstress this. I can't overstress how important it is for you to feel fucking good. There is no shift, there's no transformation that comes from your self-oppression. And that's really what it is. A lot of us have experienced such deep trauma around what it means to be to have pleasure, to have joy, to feel good, to feel orgasmic, to feel free, to feel liberated, to feel ecstatic. We have so much shame and guilt around that puritanical bullshit that is white supremacist. I just want to be clear that is not an indigenous way of thinking. Like I mean, in the United States specifically has a uniquely, like, really, really cruddy way. I mean, even in Europe, they're not trying to pull 40, 70-hour work weeks, Like it's absolutely, so this idea that you don't have the luxury, like thinking about it as a luxury is the problem. And I will remind you, Clarinda, about the time when you brought that ultra luxurious bed so you could actually get some fucking rest, and what that did for your quality of life.
It has. That is true.
And so necessary, and I'm not saying that everybody got to go, buy a really luxurious bed, but I am saying that everybody does need to tend to ourselves. Part of, and this is not something that we do in isolation, right? Because a lot of times when we get into conversations about self-care, then we start thinking like, oh yeah, I need to go to the spa. Oh, right. Pleasure is an orientation on a compass, right? So it's not like, oh, you do this specific consumer things, and then you find joy, you find pleasure. It's you understand where your pleasure is and exists in you, and you move towards that in your life, and you make your decisions orienting yourself towards that. So, because we like, the brainwashing is so deep, we don't understand that it's actually like really pleasurable and really enjoyable to be alive. It's actually really pleasurable to be us. Like, it really feels good. Like it really feels good to be me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it really, like, if I sit here and I let all the bullshit go, if you sit here for a second and you let all the bullshit go, all the judgments, all the, oh, I should do this, I should be that, I should have this, I did this wrong, I fucked this up, I fucked that up. And you just sat there and you were just present with yourself. You'd be like, damn, this kind of feel all right. Yeah. It feels good. It feels good to be, and so we, when we live in societies where from the time that you're a child, you're a small child, you're taught that everything that feels good is wrong. It really does a head trick to you, because it is completely the opposite of universal laws, completely the opposite of the law of creation. Like, in my worldview, my understanding of the world, the reason why all of this exists is because it fucking feels good to creation. Life itself is an expression of the ecstatic, right? So we're sitting up here and we're feeling like, oh my God, everything's so terrible. I don't like myself, and I don't like the way I dress and talk and walk and be, and everything I do is wrong and everything I do is fucked up. We are out of order. We are out of order. So back to the conversation about like really loving ourselves and really being with ourselves and really being tender with ourselves. It's because that's how we get in alignment. That's how we get in, into this conversation around coherence and deep self-consent about our power. Our power isn't what they told us. Our power is that. That's why they work so hard to get it away from us.
I had to speak to that luxury and that resistance, because it's like, because it's like and I think this is the whole importance of this practice, of recognizing this as practice, and that this is something that we have to constantly be diligent about, because yeah, like for me too, like I've been doing this work and have had this understanding for a long time, and yet I still daily will come up against that.
And that's the part that I was starting to touch on, but I didn't get to fully, is that we start getting into like, oh, we need to do, facials and spas and this. This is not about an individual practice. You are going to forget. We all forget. I forget. You forget. We forget. And that's why it's important for us to come into relationship with each other, so that we can remember how important it is for us to center ourselves, center our pleasure, to nourish ourselves, because it really is a nourishment. And a lot of the time when people, I'll speak for myself, when I'm doom scrolling, it's because I'm not nourishing myself with connection. It's because I'm not nourishing myself with relationship, And so it's really important that we don't just think about, oh, what can I do for myself? What can you do for yourself is important. Don't get me wrong. But it's also like, how do I be in conversation with people? And that's why, shameless plug, that's why I create the spaces that I create, so that we can be in conversation around these things, because everything outside of ourselves, everything outside, of these spaces, like the spaces that you're making, the decolonial spaces that you're making, the decolonial spaces that people are making, everything outside of that is about putting us back into the box and turning our lights off. It's about oppressing us. So we are going to go out there and forget. We have to have places where we can come to remember who we are and how important it is that we are centering our truths, because our truth is pleasurable. And when we center our truths, that is where the access point to our power is. And that's why there's no judgment too, right? Like anytime that you come to me, or I've gone to my mentor, and I have, it's something that she's told me time and time and time again, it doesn't, we gonna forget. You gonna forget. And we can't judge ourselves for not moving forward in a linear manner, and just like,
Right.
not, and not just getting it and, oh, I got this thing intellectually and why am I back here? No. That's why we have to have an orientation towards tenderness and love to ourselves, so that when we forget, when we fall back into freeze, when we fall back into flight, and fight or whatever, when we fall back into these places of self-sabotage and procrastination and anxiety, that we have a tool of tenderness and self-love, that we can be like, hey, I see you. I know you think you should be doing 100 other things, and you're doing this instead, and and you're feeling guilty and down. But you know what? Now we just going to take a breath. Now we just going to get in the shower. Now we just go and really treating ourselves with the deep love and consideration that we would treat a child.
Right. And also having those, I know you talked about this before, but like, like having the systems of support that remind us of that, right? Like, because we're not going to, and we shouldn't have to be the ones to be constantly having to remind ourselves of that. That's why we have each other, right?
Absolutely.
We need each other for that. We need our system to create. We need to be conscious of and intentional about creating those systems of support for ourselves, so that we have those constant reminders, so that when we're forgetting and we don't, we're not even thinking about it. We are a part of those systems that, we know Tuesday I'm going to be talking with Joy or whatever it is, and and then it gets addressed, and things that we're not addressing for ourselves get addressed. But also I love something that has always stuck with me with what you said before, Joy, is like, it's so common to you, for at least for me in the bubbles that I'm in, and in the language that we use, it's very common to use the word systemic around things that are harmful. But the way that you talked about it was like, we have to remember that there is a lot of support for us that is systemic, that has always been there. I don't know if you wanted to speak to that. I actually read, and just before you do address that, I do want to acknowledge we are over the time we did say. I'm full to keep going until we feel we are complete. But this is being recorded, and that recording will be sent out to everybody. So I just want to let everybody know, in case you did need to head off, that's all good. It is being recorded, and I'll get that to everybody. But I'm cool to keep vibing for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I would love to speak to that, because I think that's a big part of, especially when we find ourselves feeling like we are self-sabotaging, or feeling like we have things that are too big that we can't surmount. One of the sort of thoughts that really that is really insidious in this society is that we are alone, that we are individuals, that we are not, that we don't have any support, and that the only systems that there are the systems that were created for our oppression, right? And so that it is that if we don't play by those rules and inside of those, containers and systems, that we will lose, that we will not be supported, that we will not have what we need, that we won't, thrive, that we won't be successful. And I'm reminded that even during the worst parts of enslavement from my ancestors, that my ancestors, that our African ancestors in the United States, created these spaces called hush harbors. And hush harbors were places, and not just hush harbors, like people would go off the plantation so that they could be reconnected to divine, in their indigenous African ways, right? And people would go off of the plantation so that they could have parties and find pleasure and dance and joke. And, so there were always, regardless of even people who did not sort of flee enslavement, there were always places of resistance to systemic oppression, even in the worst of times and the worst of places, because it is so important for us to remember that we are connected to something bigger than what this society tells us our place is, right? That there are systems and ways of being. And when I say systems, I mean kinship, right? Because systems are such a, it's such a, a word that seems, I think, for a lot, devoid of life, right? Devoid of, when I say systems, I mean, there are powerful relationships that connect us to the web of the living and the dead and the living dead. Don't let me leave nobody out. There are systems that connect us, and information and feedback that we get through our body systems, and that even us as inside of this body, that we are not, a lot of us tend to think that we're just floating brains, right? Just on top, just walking down the street and that our brains are on track. We have billions of cells, nerve endings, and intestines that are so long, and nerve endings. Bye, baby. I'll see you later. Be safe. We have so much that connection just inside of ourselves. And that's why the concept for me of self-consent is so important. Are we asking ourselves, how do they feel about that? Are we asking our hearts, are we asking our breath? Are we asking our lungs? Where is our breath sitting at right now? Are we getting the information from our feet, which is connected to the earth most of the time, which are connected to the earth? Are we processing the information that's coming into our body so that we can make powerful decisions based in the systems of relationship and kinship that are true? You know, I think that's, you know, like when you come, and I know that you open with your kinship, your relationship back and back and back, you know, in your relationship to, like, that is a system of understanding, of remembering, of reconnecting. That is a system that you can access power through, right? The power of who you are comes through this remembering. And that's why you introduce yourself in the ways that you do, you know? And that's like, it's so important that we are always remembering that these systems that they've created do not outweigh the systems that have been here for eternity, have preceded us and will surpass us, you know, and that we are a part of we are a part of that weaving, you know.
Thank you for speaking to that. What is where is everybody at? What pauses, what questions are in our minds right now? I'd love to hear from, I know we've had a lot going on in the chat, and I feel like we've I don't know that we kind of went in on addressing things directly, but we definitely spoke on everything that was I feel that was popped into the chat. But what's like, where are we at? What are we feeling? What is arising? Feel free and to unmute.
Hello, everybody. Can I say something?
Go ahead.
This has been so rich. And I love the reorientation around systems because you're right. I think you said, Clarinda, we tend to think about systems as something negative, and I also use it in a negative connotation when I refer to any kind of systems, but just kind of really reclaiming even the word to fit a reorientation of how we do community care, how we collectivize with each other. That really resonated, so I wrote that down to begin to use that. I have a question regarding, like, because all of this resonates in my body. It's like it's a deep like nourishment and healing just to hear my, I think, internal voices reflected back to me. So I use some of this like in my own language. I have obviously my own adaptation, but what would you say to people that have a very hard time? These are people of the global majority. These aren't, you know, I tend to work with Black and Brown and Indigenous folks, but what would you say to folks that have a very hard time embracing this? And these are, I think, typically the folks that, I mean, we're all ultra colonized, right? And so I start there. And so it's about I help people peel those layers back so they could see themselves through their own eyes. But there are some folks who struggle a lot more than others to peel those layers. So what is maybe language or like how do you start with those folks? How would you start with those folks that have they're so sucked into the matrix that it's kind of like, it's almost like a visceral reaction to invite them to flow at their own rhythm, as I like to call it. Yeah.
I think first of all, I like to recognize the inherent like divinity and sovereignty of every person, right? That everybody has their own relationships with themselves and their own orientation to themselves that has come because of a lifetime of experience, and maybe even lifetimes of experience for some people. And so I like to get curious personally like it, I think that it's very important when you're dealing with somebody who may, you know, feel like they are struggling. As somebody who is just like very, very like hard-headed myself and has often found myself in a place of struggle, it is to reaffirm the divinity of that person, to reaffirm that person's, you know, the ability of that person to make decisions for themselves, but also like to be curious, right? Like, oh, I see what that is. Where does that voice come from? What does that mean? And to ask more questions about the person. Because I, you know, when I work with people, I tend to like, I absolutely love it. I absolutely love being with people who, you know, may be experiencing some difficulty, and maybe like really struggling around certain issues. I really love being there with and for that person. And I think that part of the reason why I'm so good at the work that I do is because I do love it and I do love them. And a lot of times, like it's not my job. It's not my job to make a person anything other than who and what they are. It's not my job to make a person have any other decisions other than the decisions that they're going to make. It's not my job to change anybody. It's not my job to fix anybody. It's only my job to invite people to see themselves more clearly and more fully. And sometimes people accept those invitations, and sometimes they will not accept those invitations. And the times when they don't accept those invitations, you can bless them too, because even at those times, they are still sovereign. They still have a divinity. They are still connected. And for you, even if you don't affirm that to them, you can still affirm for yourself their connection to their own ancestors, their connection to the earth, their connection to the breath, their connection to themselves. You can affirm that for them, even if you're not speaking it to them. And I think that it's so important that we don't, you know, try to push anything. And I'm not saying that you are, but I'm just saying this in general, to try to push a cure or try to push a fix or try to push somebody being something other than what they are. Even if we see that somebody looks deeply colonized, or somebody looks like they're doing things that in a manner that we would, because that's what, you know, that's what we are taught for so long, that there's something inherently wrong with us, you know, that there's something that needs to be fixed. I think that it is the job of healers to remind people of what is whole in them, and to invite people to that wholeness consistently and be that beacon of wholeness for the other people. If that makes sense, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, totally. I think maybe I'm a little projecting my like, oh, come on, you know, like there's depth, there's more. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's I'm trained as a social worker, so I'm originally trained to meet people where they're at anyway. And so this just brings me back to that initial remembrance. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that kind of that reminds me a little bit of somebody, a very good friend of mine recently told me that you know, certainly for me, I've experienced a lot of as so many of us have in recent years, and yeah, just experiencing so many shifts, so much change, and that's not necessarily comfortable for a lot of the people around us when that change is happening, and that they said to me, you know, when you have to know that when you change, when you transition, you have to allow for others to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just kind of reminded me of that sentiment, that we can't control that, but we are changing, we are transitioning, and we have to allow for that collective change to also occur in the ways that it is and does. So yeah. All right, what else is coming up? What are the questions, pauses, comments, thoughts? What is feeling left unvoiced?
And not because it was unvoiced, but This may be a generational thing. It may be I live on a different planet thing. I don't know. But I could Google it, but I would love to hear you all tell me exactly what is doom scrolling. Because I get a sense of it and I have a sense of larger what it means, but I'd like to hear y'all tell me.
But first of all, you look lovely today. You're sky blue. You look beautiful, radiant as always. To me, doom scrolling is when you're scrolling past the point of sense, like you're not even necessarily taking in the information. You're just like scrolling, and like it's almost for me. Sometimes it's like almost like a kind of a trance state. Like I'm just
Trance,
like
yeah, it's hypnotic, yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels uncontrollable or feel endless, not serving a purpose.
Okay, it is generational. I can't imagine having that kind of relationship with a mechanical device. Not even a vibrator.
Love that. Mm. Joy, you do this all the time. You know, when I host other talks, people are like always in with the questions and like, but what about this and what about that? And then I feel like all the time with you, everyone's just like, wow. It's just a lot to take in.
Yeah, we be trying to fit a lot in an hour, you know.
Yes.
I feel like when we're in conversation together, it you know, the range is, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
As you know me, I could talk for hours. I could talk to you for hours.
I do know. I know. We do. Okay. So then if there is nothing else from
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I guess I'm wondering, where do you go to source that self-love? Or like, how do you find, that's like the hardest thing for me, is accessing that feeling of really being loved. And like, if you haven't really experienced it, right? If people haven't treated you as your whole, and that they're there to love and nourish you no matter what, you know, where do you source that from? How do you find that?
I could show you better than I could tell you, and that's why, you know, again, meet the tiger is happening. And I would say, before you get to love, because I feel like love can be such a big thing for a lot of people, and it can be very triggering for a lot of people to think about, like, especially like something like unconditional love or unconditional support. There are two things that we always know, that we will always know, have the ability to know if we pay attention. And that is if something feels good and if something feels bad. Okay. So we always have that ability to come towards pleasure. We always have that ability to come towards feeling good. And I think that if you allow yourself to follow that thread and allow yourself to center, you know, a pleasure, to center a joy, to center an expansiveness, that you'll run into love. You will run into love, right? And the idea that we are not loved, we know it's a lie. And the reason why we know it's a lie is because that shit don't feel good. It feels yucky. It feels terrible. It feels horrid. You know, when we feel unloved, we feel like we don't want to be here. We feel like we don't want to exist. We feel like there's no point of existence. And that's how, that's how we know it's a lie, because it feels terrible like that. Okay. I'm not saying that the truth always feels good, but the truth always feels liberating. So if you're moving towards liberation, to me, liberation feels pleasurable. To me, when I feel free, when I feel more expansive, that's a pleasurable feeling to me. If you're moving towards that expansiveness, then you move away from the lie, because when you feel like you're not loved, that means, first of all, you feel like you're alone. You feel like you're the only person in this world. And not only you're the only, but it's just you. But right now, even at this moment, you say nobody loves you, but your heart is beating. Nobody loves you, but you have breath. Nobody loves you, but the earth produces food for you. You know, nobody loves you, but the sun shines for you. Nobody loves you, but the rains fill the rivers so that we can drink water. Nobody loves you, but this earth hasn't been combusted yet by some idiot pressing a nuclear bomb, you know? So like that idea that we are unloved creates a very minuscule window for us to look out of. I always liken it to being turned around in a corner and saying there's nothing there. And so the invitation that I would have is for you to turn around and be present to what does love you. Because a lot of times, and this is something that I get more into when it comes to and Meet the Tiger, but like we tend to believe we don't have something, like we don't have love, or we doubt ourselves, we don't believe it, we don't have trust, but we do have trust. We trust something, you know. We may not be trusting ourselves, but we trust something. It's a question of what we're trusting. And it's not true that there's no love for you. It's a question of what you will listen to. You've always been loved. There's never been a point in time where you haven't been loved. There's been people that have tried to convince you very, very hard, and systems that try to convince you very, very hard that you're unloved. But the lie crumbles as soon as you set foot if you put your feet into the earth, that lie will crumble. I was 18 years old the first time a tree saved my life. 18 years old. When a tree saved, when I thought I was so alone, I thought that I was going to die. You know, a tree that ain't know me a tree in the middle of Atlanta didn't know me from a can of paint. I sat up on that tree, and that tree showed me so much love. It crumbles. The lie that you are not loved crumbles as soon as you touch grass. So a lot of us just need to touch grass more, you know, or not necessarily grass, maybe some dandelions, maybe some comfrey, maybe some burdock, you know, maybe some mullein, touch some mullein, you know, touch a cedar, touch a fig tree, touch something real. When you touch something real, love is there. And that's how you know it's real. If it ain't real, if love ain't in it, it's not. Did that answer your question?
Sorry, I realized I responded while on mute. And yes, thank you for your answer. I really deeply appreciate the reminders.
Thank you for the question.
I feel like that is a beautiful place to complete us today.
Yes.
I do need to run to go get my baby from school. So I'm going to go do that. Put the link in there for everybody who wants to have a look at Meet the Tiger. Honestly, look, I'm just going to be really straight with you. Meet the Tiger, taking on, looking at business support and Ever Uvi membership. These are the money is the smallest concern. It is for what Joy is one of the most generous people that I know, just in who she is, just in
in everything that she offers. I just want to put it to you straight. If there is any hesitation, if you would like to take advantage of this container with Joy, just get in conversation. Just send the message. Just even if you're not quite sure how to address that, like send Joy a DM and just say like SOS. I'm in a place, I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what to ask, but I want to get in, like just reach out. Same with me. If you're looking for business support, just send the message. Again, same, SOS, whatever it is. If you don't know what question to ask, but you just know you need to get in conversation, you need to get support, you need to get, you know that you're in a place that you need those support networks, and you need to know that you are held. Just reach out. We are here. You are supported. You are resourced. We are here. So I want to be very, very clear about that. I love you all. Thank you all for making this happen. Thank you, Joy, so much. There's always a pleasure.
For real. We gotta do this more often, because I really miss talking. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. No, let's make a thing of this.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be in touch with everybody. I'm gonna send, so heads up, I'll probably send about 3 emails in the next few days. Just little reminders with the recording links for those of you who might, want to either watch again, or for those of you who aren't here or weren't able to make it, make sure everybody has those links. I'm just giving you that heads up that I'm not going to spam you, but just 3 little nudges to make sure that you have it for sure. Yeah, but you all be well. Thank you so much for joining, everybody.
Peace.
Take care. Bye.